So maybe you can give us your personal backstory, if you will.
Sounds good. Yeah, I wrote the book mainly because of my own personal encounters with trauma since a very early age. So, what introduced me to the medical field was when my sister, who was only 14, she died of brain cancer. I was only 6 years old at the time, but
Wow.
I decided to pursue medicine and I did very good in medical school. I thought I'm going to be a brain surgeon, but every time I go to the OR, I end up fainting on the floor. So after I fainted a number of times, they told me maybe I should look for another branch of medicine other than surgery. And I became an emergency room physician. And I really liked working in the ER, but I was very attracted to listening to people trauma stories. So not only their visible wounds, mainly the invisible wounds. And then my home country, Libya, went through a civil war in 2011, and I found myself going back and forth to refugee camps and war-affected areas, and uh, went through the Harvard program in refugee trauma. I got trained on how to take care of people who survived number of traumatic experiences, not only as individuals but also families and communities.
Yeah, that's great shorthand, a description of a very eventful life that you've had. And I'm trying to remember, were you in Libya as a small child? I've sort of forgotten some of the main ingredients when the bombing happened. And so your life kind of started out with trauma, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
Is this 1986, the bombing? Yeah, during the time of President Reagan, and there was a conflict between him and Colonel Gaddafi, who was
Yes.
the man of Libya. And I was only 13-year-old at the time. I remember sleeping through the whole episode, but my mom was the only one awake, and she decided to keep the children asleep because she said if we die, there was no need to die in panic, and we're gonna all go to heaven. And so my mom has been my anchor. I lost my mom recently, like in 2016, but she is the reason why I do the humanitarian work that I do. And very recently, after the pandemic, I have noticed that trauma is not only something that happens to our clients, but our clients' stories can trigger our own trauma. So that's why I have seen many of my colleagues, doctors, nurses, social workers, and so on. They either leave the field or they start to self-medicate their trauma using substance, or some of them unfortunately die by suicide. That's what ignited my passion to write The Wounded Healer.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I wondered if the current Ukraine war is a trigger has been a trigger for you. I would think that that would revive your own experiences as a child.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's very unfortunate that we are witnessing this in the year 2022, and it's just very sad when humans don't stop the cycle of violence. And my previous book is called Untangled because I noticed many children and families and caregivers and even communities, they are tangled in the web of trauma. So in order to break the cycle, it has to stop at one of us. We need to make a deliberate decision to take care of our future generations. So yes, I mean, I have been very upset about the recent events. I think going through the Harvard program, refugee trauma, and learning some skills and tools, and also visiting refugee camps has been helpful in my own healing.